here we are live in the Sandbox. Sean Zayas and Tim McNeely of Irvine, California. Now, hanging in a hotel room at the moment, but we're going to be talking with you guys about just the entrepreneurial grind. And is it work-life balance? Is it work-life harmony? What does it mean to try to climb the mountain and not lose the people that you love in the midst of the grind? Tim, just thanks for being with me, man. Welcome.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you, Sean.
So, Tim, where do you? I was like, where do you want to start when it comes to the entrepreneurial grind?
Hey, there's so many places we can start. Right? We can start about the struggle, we can start about the journey, we can deal with the ups and downs, we can deal with the feelings of failure and never succeeding, and then we can also deal with being on the high of the mountain and feeling like you've conquered it all just to fail the next day. I mean, like this is the entrepreneurial journey.
It sounds like you have a lot of experience with this. I was like,
Just a wee bit.
yeah, I can relate to everything that you just said. And so one of the plumb lines in my life, people are like, why do you always use the word plumb line? Well, I mean, it's biblical, and it just makes sense for me that it's kind of like from the top down, something that prioritizes everything for me. And for the longest time, Tim, I didn't realize that I was already wealthy, not in a monetary sense, but just in terms of life, because I had an amazing wife and have an amazing wife, and I'm just super thankful for my family, and I'm thankful for my friends, and I'm thankful for the opportunity I even have to be able to show up. And that took a while for me to realize the gift of even just the idea, of hey, I can create value. I can show up. I have people that believe in me. Um, I don't think I integrated that for a very long time. So I immediately lost sense of where am I? Because whether it's the treadmill or whether it's the fast track, it's all about upward, 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 more, more, more. And I made the biggest mistake of measuring myself instantly based off of the people that were like the 1% of 1%, 1%. It's like, well, hey, Mark Zuckerberg started something and became a billionaire overnight, seemingly. So therefore, how come I am not worth 100 million after my first year of business or something? Like crazy stuff. And it was, I don't even know why things like that would come in my mind. Um, but they did. What was your journey like in the beginning? Was it something where you were blinded by ambition, kind of like I was? Did you ever lose your sense of bearing?
Yeah, I think for me is it really comes down to that sense of like you mentioned, like what is true wealth, right? What does it mean to really be wealthy? And that's such a struggle. And and I so identify with what you're talking about. I think as driven entrepreneurs, right, we are attracted to people who are really making things happen, right? We hang out with high performing people because we're high performing people. But one of the things we forget in that process is like, it's just the rooms that we find ourselves in. The fact that we're in those rooms, we're already way ahead of so many other people. And like you said, we end up comparing ourselves with the best of the best of the best, and we just feel like losers sometimes. And we're like, man, what's going on? And and the more I meditate on my journey, because a lot of people, right, I was just trying to talk on my story, and people were like, Tim, what's your story? And I was kind of joking. I'm like, well, I know the beginning of my story, right? As a person of faith, like my story began before the world, was created. And I know how my story ends. Like it's got a really good ending. But like the middle part, like I'm really fuzzy on like what's the middle part of my story. And so as I've meditated on that, and you asked me that question of like where I am and what's that plumb line, I keep coming back to this idea of stewardship, right? It's really being a steward of the things I've been given, and not just money. And this is true for everyone listening. Like you are a steward of things. You are a steward of your talents. You're a steward of your time. You're a steward of the resources that you have, the people and the relationships that you have. And yes, you're even a steward of things like your dental practice and your money and your investments. But there's so many things that we are stewards of. And I think that stewardship a lot of times can actually create a lot of stress in our life because we don't have a plan for how to deal with everything we've been given.
Okay, I think it's amazing that you started off with something as profound as stewardship. For those of you that don't know, I mean, it should be pretty obvious, but Tim is just incredibly thoughtful, very intellectual, a deep, deep thinker. So for you to arrive at something as profound as stewardship, um, it just really helps, I think, frame the beginning of this conversation for sure. Because I was literally just interviewing someone, Joanne Majors, such a fan of her.
Mm,
I met her at the Vanessa event that you were also
mhm.
at.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how it's so important for individuals to be able to be curious and be really good listeners and be able to make great connections with other people on like an EQ level. And it's funny because as she was saying that, I was just like, biblically speaking, the qualifications of an elder is that they've already got their home in order. Well, so what are some of the assumptions there? They're married, possibly they have children, and what that means is that they have two roles already, possibly. They're a husband or wife, and they're either a mother and father. And if you actually submit to those roles and you're thriving in it, it means you've probably learned how to listen. You've probably learned how to actually see another person and really care and care about actual human connection. But if you aren't tethered to a relationship, maybe you're just trying to grind and hustle, you may not understand the value of EQ. You may not understand the value of actually just treating someone the way they deserve. Um, I I remember a quote that was so interesting to me. It's that a lot of people think that they're holy, that are single, but they're just literally undisturbed. And the reference was that being married is a disturbance in some ways, in the fact that like you're with this best friend, this person that's with you all the time, even when you don't want them to. It's not like a friend that you can choose to see when you're doing great, but when you're not, you can kind of withdraw. And it doesn't mean you couldn't do that in marriage, but when you're starting out, all of a sudden it's like, wow, like rain or shine, happy or kind of sad, this person's there and they're seeing all of it. Um, and this, how does this relate? Well, it has to do with the fact that like stewardship, so much of even what Jordan Peterson says is like clean your room, like take care of your room. Like if you can take care of the area where you have a domain, some dominion over, and you can take care of that area, well, then maybe you can be entrusted with more. But some people, in myself included, we just want to go straight for like, I want to have the multi-million dollar corporation and be looked to. And I realized it is absolutely important the way in which I steward my relationships with my wife and my children. Um, and that's not a small thing, So I don't know if you were thinking of specifically other things with stewardship, because there's a lot more to it. But right away, I go to like, yeah, am I showing up and doing a good job in the ways in which kind of like I'm already responsible before asking for more responsibilities in some ways?
Yeah, no, that's definitely along the lines of where I'm going with that. And especially, right, when I think of stewardship, I go back to the parable of the talents. So, right, those are the stories I love. I love the stories Jesus tells. And the story of the talents is so interesting because you have the master give to his servants each a different amount. He gives one 10, he gives another 5, he gives another guy 1. So they're all given different amounts. And the first two double it. They do a great job. Master comes back, says, "Well done." And the last one just buries it in the ground and says, I didn't want to take any risk with it. He says, "You wicked servant." But what's interesting to me, and I'm actually writing a whole album on this. This will be my third produced album that I'm putting together. But what's so interesting to me about that is like all of a sudden someone shows up and they just give you a whole bunch of stuff. They're like, "Here's 10 years worth of wages in 1 year. Like go." Like, what do you do with that? Like, what's the plan? Like how do you deal with that? Like, what are the emotions? And so just that idea of being faithful with a little, Like if all of a sudden you're dumped a whole bunch of money or a whole bunch of relationships, like we can find ourselves really out of place because we haven't really learned those skills to operate at that higher level. So those are things that have to be accumulated over time. And that to me is part of stewardship, is continuing to grow your knowledge and to grow in areas that we need to grow. But kind of the wrinkle in all of this is the way you grow is through challenges. It's through the struggle. And those struggles, man, they're hard, bro. They are so hard. But that's where we grow. That's where we get the grit to keep pushing on.
Tim, I'm guessing you've heard of it too. Like, isn't that similar to what you've heard about individuals that have won the lottery?
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah.
Right? Where all of a sudden it's like they get some windfall. And the way I like to think of it,
Three
it's
three
interesting.
years. 3 years, Sean. 3 years after winning the lottery. For those of you who don't know, this is shocking, right? Imagine you just won the lottery. Someone puts $100 million in your bank account. Most of you are thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm set." Most lottery winners, and I should know the exact number, but it's a big percentage. 3 years later, are not just broken out of money, Sean, but they are now in debt. So not only did they manage to spend the $100 million, they managed to rack up debt in the process too, because they didn't have a plan. They were given a whole lot of stuff, but they didn't learn how to steward what they were given.
Man, it's such an interesting thing because I feel like when it comes to, let's say, stewarding the presence of the Lord, or stewarding um, intimacy with God, so much of it has to do with virtue. Um, where it's like everyone's like, oh, hey, I want to be as close as I can, or almost like Moses, like, show me your face. And yet, to be entrusted with so much glory, if you don't have the virtue that can undergird that, it's going to crush you.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same exact way, you learn financial principles when you are gradually out there trying. You're in the marketplace, you're out just in life, giving it your best, and you're actually learning and cultivating some sense of what to do with it. So then all of a sudden, as more comes, you get qualified whether or not it's going to crush you, or you can continue to handle it. And and that's why any individuals that are obsessed with shortcuts or hacks, it's not that there's anything wrong with that. I think it's like the third or fourth priority. It's like you could layer that on top of something you're already doing. But at the core, it's more about the long game. It's about doing things for the right reasons. It's about being committed to really helping other people out. And an aspect of stewardship that I think is fascinating is about the fact that, like, what about the gifts and talents we've been given? So it's like here, God gives really unique talents to you, Tim. And all of a sudden, it's that same exact question with the parable of the talents. What what did you do with it?
Yeah.
Were you afraid to do something great with it? Because to me, it's like, even like putting it in the bank to get interest. To me, you could almost liken that to, I kind of did the safe bet because I didn't want to screw anything up.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, how many of us are staying in the lines, following general patterns of even expression, because we don't want to screw anything up, you know? Just in my private life this week, I realized I was reading something about faith. And I was realizing, I think for the last 10, 12 years of my life, the biggest struggle I've had is actually how much fear I have about being me.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know if that resonates at all with you, but if I really had to get down to it, the reason I'm not in faith, walking with God about who I am at an identity level, is because somewhere I either have wrong beliefs about who God is to me. Is he provider? Is he father? Is he the good shepherd? And ultimately about, am I enough? Am I really someone he created intentionally on purpose, that has a plan, that can just shine? And that's why so much of my language that I try to inspire people with, that's not the conversation I'm having in my head. Like, that's what I want to be having in my head, but often I'm my own worst critic. Sorry.
Yeah. No, no, no. This is such good stuff, and I think we end up there a lot of times because we're scared to be authentic, and a lot of times we don't even know what is really going on inside of us because we haven't actually spent the time to know us and to know what makes us tick. And so, I was having a conversation with my wife this week, and we were going over something that happened, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago in our marriage, And there was this instance where, she was going to a dental meeting or whatever, and something about jealousy came up in our conversation. And she's like, Tim, you're usually not jealous of relationships or things I do. She's like, that's not like you. And I actually got really upset at her. I'm like, well, fine. If you don't want me to be jealous, then I just won't care about you, right? So like just really nasty stuff. And so we were reliving that conversation, like trying to figure out what was going on, because I'm a different person than I was 6 years ago, completely different. And as we were going through that conversation, all of a sudden it kind of hit me. I'm like, man, what I wish I would have been able to know about myself and communicate her to her at that point is like, yeah, Dana, I actually am kind of jealous because you're going and hanging out with all these really powerful, high-powered dentists. And yeah, I'm actually scared of our relationship because I feel like I don't measure up. And that's the conversation I wish I would have known myself well enough to have, because that would have led to authenticity, that would have led to growth, that would have led to us coming together instead of fighting. But I didn't know myself well enough. I just knew I felt uncomfortable about the whole thing, and I got mad because I didn't understand what was going inside. I didn't understand those fear of inadequacy and the fear of not measuring up. And those things have real tangible impacts on our relationships.
I think we could stay there for a little while. The fear of not measuring up, the fear of being inadequate, I think it's a lot more common in entrepreneurial circles where people are trying to be heart centered. And truly, what does that actually mean? Um, I think it's someone that, yeah, again, I think part of the word you use fits, authentic. Um, part of what I've talked about is like the idea of, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, let's even pause on authentic a little bit, because I think that gets so misdefined today, and it goes off in so many wrong directions. Because, right, we're told, oh, be your authentic self. And a lot of times that just means like give in to whatever your urges are, and like whatever like being preached to you by the outside.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times we adopt things that aren't really our authentic self, but because we feel them or we have an inclination. We're like, oh, that must be the authentic me. So like that's what I'm gonna do. But I don't think that's true authenticity. I think you have to actually really sit and meditate and pay some attention to like who you are, to figure out like what is your authentic self, like what are your talents, what are you good at, what are your unique gifts. And so I think you have to kind of sit with what is being authentic, and it's not necessarily the first things that pop into our head.
Okay, I love that. So yeah, let's just put a bomb in the whole like if we blow it up and look at it from the inside out. I think that's fascinating because I don't know if I told you, but there's something Eric Weinstein said in an interview the other day that really hit me. He said, I'm not sure if everybody's heard their own voice inside their head. And I think what he meant is like, we can be so programmed, so inundated with scripts and noise all around us. We become really, really in tune with what to do to fit in, um, to be accepted, to play the game that everyone's playing. You learn this in school. If you kind of wear the wrong clothes, you get made fun of. You kind of say the wrong things, you get made fun of. If you're not cool, if you try too hard to be cool, you get made fun of. School can just be absolutely brutal. Um, so the idea is if we can deconstruct and be like, okay, so how do you know you're listening to programming? Um, and I love the idea that you said it's not just following whatever whims or urges that you might have that are primal, as if there's no notion of wrong or even like, let's just say sin. And I know that's such a word that like seems so dark and whatnot, but I'm authentic isn't I can do whatever I want because it's coming from within, therefore it must be good, and let's just label it authentic. I think that's crazy. Um, and that's why I love the story of the prodigal son. It's like the father was waiting for the son to come back, to return to identity, to return to what was authentic, because he was off squandering, he was off living a life where he was almost like royalty, and now all of a sudden he's feeding swine and he's covered in mud, and it's just beneath his dignity.
Yeah.
And the father didn't say,
But
no,
for a
I want to
moment,
sell it. What was
but
that?
for a moment, the son thought that was his authentic self,
Right.
but it sure wasn't. And sometimes we've got to screw it up to learn who we are authentically.
And yet the father didn't go there and say, I'm going to celebrate you in the midst of in the midst of this fallen identity, and say, no, this is who you are. I want to celebrate you. He called them back to true identity and waited for him to come back. And when he did, then he threw the robe on him,
Yeah.
celebrated. And so, yeah, I think there is this North Star of like, no, it's not just base primal urges. It's truly something in you at the heart level, at the wiring level of what you're wired to do, who you're wired to be, the giftings, the things that actually help people on the upward aim,
Hmm.
instead of something that would be like selfish. Because I feel like selfish is probably the root of anything that's like not
Hmm.
love, right? Um, I don't want to just keep talking though.
No, I'm loving this conversation. This is amazing.
I know, but I need to get better at being back and forth in the middle of my thoughts, because I don't want to. I don't want to start monologuing.
Mhm. But yeah, authenticity, realness, and just pursuing wholeness, I think is so important. But you got to have that vulnerability, right? You got to be willing to show your colors to others, and you got to get feedback from the world on what's working and what's not.
Um, Even going back to what you were saying, kind of with your wife, I think just having the courage to be able to be like, I wish I could have
Hmm.
had that conversation. I wish I could have, with peace on me, just been able to share about an area that I felt insecure about.
Yep.
Um, I know as a business owner, you look around and it seems like every other business owner just has it figured out. If you go on social media, all you see are the highlights.
Yeah.
All you see are the ways in which people seemingly are crushing it.
Yeah.
And then I would take a break, I'd look in the mirror and I'd be like, well, you certainly aren't crushing it, Sean. Like, so then the conclusion is what?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?
Bingo, right? What is wrong? And once again, I mentioned I'm writing a whole album on this, and I just want to read you some of the lyrics to one of my songs I wrote, and actually I think the title really captures that. And the song is called "Always Fourth Place," Sean, "Always Fourth Place," because I think a lot of times that's what we feel like as entrepreneurs.
Missing the podium?
Yeah, right. And my opening lines is right. I'm not the winner, not even close. Just a footnote in their victory post. Third place is gone, seconds out of sight. I'm the runner up, they'll forget by tonight. And I think we feel that way oftentimes because we're doing this comparison game instead of really just comparing to where are we based on the goals we've set. And even if you don't hit your lofty goals, guess what? Like you're still in the race and you're running it. And it doesn't matter first, second, or third. It matters like how well did you run?
And I think, again, I love the metaphor of light. If a decade goes by and I'm trying to figure out how to produce, manufacture, make whatever light frequency, whatever light color and variation is in, it's like, well, then no part of that is ever a success. If I could then can have the courage to look in and go, you know what, I'm fine. I'm just going to actually release the light that only I can release.
Hmm.
Well, if I do that every single day and I have the courage to actually do that, a year goes by where I actually showed myself to the world in a real way, tried to give my contribution, tried to give my perspective, tried to give an answer to a problem that maybe I was meant to solve. Well, then that is me being a success, regardless of whatever outcome is reached, regardless of whatever destination outwardly I actually end up, reaching. Because for me, I was always measuring my success based off of the destination, based off of the outcome. And I couldn't control that. But what I could control is, am I occupying the space that only I can occupy? With the domain that I've been given, back to stewardship, am I just giving it my best? And I just saw that it was in Colossians. It says, like, whatever you do, I forgot the first part. Do it as unto the Lord is basically the punchline.
Hmm.
And I had this sign that's in one of my office closets. It's not hanging up, it's in the closet. And just the other day, I saw that and I was like, God, thank you for that reminder because it's not about how I'm showing up before man. It's about you see everything. You see my heart. You see that whether I'm faking it
Hmm.
or whether I'm being genuine. And that's why I think this conversation, so much of it is like, hey, to anyone listening, dare to be you. Dare to be the original that you actually are.
It just may work out.
And it may not for a while. Like the tension of timing, where it's like some rise, some fall, and there you are on the
Yeah.
sideline wondering when's it gonna be my time, Tim?
Well, right, and coming back to fear, right? Fear is such a powerful force in our lives, and a lot of times we are in spaces and places and situations that we know are not working, right? We know it can be better, right? We know we can fix this thing in our business, or we're settling for a relationship that's subpar, or right, we're not working on the issues that could drive your marriage forward, or drive the business forward, right? And we're settling because we're actually scared to push forward because there's actually comfort in the known, like there's comfort in the brokenness. And sometimes we just want to hang out there and we're like, well, yeah, it's broke, but at least like I know how the broken stuff works. And if I do this other thing, like, yeah, I could get better, but it might not. So I'm just going to stay here in the brokenness instead of trying to push forward. And that fear can really hold us back. I know it's something I have to always fight as an entrepreneur is hey, like, let's push forward. Like, tell my brain to shut up. No, brain, get be quiet. I'm not going to buy into your lies. Like, no, I am going to move forward and I'm not going to listen to the fear.
So Tim, one of the things that was really helpful was when someone said, like, for some reason we have a different frame of mind when we think about someone we love than the way we view ourselves. So whether that's you being a father to yourself, whether that's you being the best friend to yourself, take yourself outside of yourself. Which role do you want to pick? Do you want to pick a best friend of yourself? Do you want to pick a father? Do you want to pick, I don't really know if there's another role. Which
Yeah,
role?
best friend to myself.
Okay, so as a best friend, if you were seeing outside of yourself Tim, he's there, you're best friends with Tim, and you just know him. You know the way his heart is gold, and he tries and he really cares and he goes above and beyond. He's so generous. Like, what would you say to him?
Hmm. I would tell him to keep going. It's gonna be all right, right? Chill out. Don't stress. Like you got this, Tim. It's okay. It's okay. Because I know that's what I struggle with a lot of times. It's just right. Once again, that fear of the worry of like what if it doesn't work out? Like what if I blow it all? Like what if I screw this whole thing up?
I love that. That actually, like, that's real.
Yeah.
I'm constantly in this place of wondering because I think when you're excellent, what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out how you can hit the target in as little attempts as possible. And I think there's a certain perfectionism. Perfectionism is, no, I have to hit the target the first time. And that's a very immature way of looking at goals and ambitions. And yet that plagued me for the longest time.
Hmm.
If I'm going to show up in an industry and I'm going to show up publicly, then the first time I show up, it better be world class, or else ego, ego, ego. What might people think? Or is that going to validate what's deepest inside of me? That again, I'm somehow not enough. I don't measure up. I don't have what it takes. When the reality is nobody nobody really cares. And I've cared too much about other people caring. So it's like if I was gonna try to empower myself from an outside perspective, I would just say, like, go big. Like, just believe
Yeah.
and show up in the full weight of who God made you to be. And don't stop downplaying who you are. Like, own who you are because it's just meant to help others. It's meant to set other people free. And that's why I tell people on my podcast all the time, Tim, it's like nobody wins if you play it safe and you play it small.
Hmm.
And I'm saying that
Hmm.
hoping that I will
I love that, Sean. I love it. Right? No one wins if you play small. How true is that? Like, no, you're not doing anyone any favors by playing small.
Oh, no, no, you might obscure other people's light. Not
Hmm.
true. Not true.
Oh,
In the abundance of light, I can't compete with someone else's light. Like, theirs is completely unique.
right. That's the thing, right? If you put 100 people in a room with a flashlight, and one person turns on the light, it gets a little bit brighter, and the second person turns it on. They don't obscure the second person's light. They make the entire room brighter. So by the time you got 100 flashlights shining, even if all of them are different strengths and different luminosities, that whole room is brighter, and no one's competing. Right? The light is lighting the entire room. That's the thing. It just gets more powerful.
And that's kind of what I think our gifts are. Since they're light, they illuminate beauty, they illuminate brilliance, and that sense of belonging that I think everyone deserves to experience.
Yeah.
You know, and again, we're talking about entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
right, Tim?
Well,
And yeah, we're talking about woo stuff like,
let's tie this back into entrepreneurship because I really believe, and I know I've found this to be true, and I'm sure you have too, Sean, and I know everyone listening, right? If you've hung out in any kind of entrepreneur communities, chances are you have found this true. As most people, they actually want to see you succeed, like they want to see you do well, and they want to know, how can I help you. In fact, that's like a common question when I'm meeting someone for the first time in these entrepreneurial worlds. Like that's kind of the first question we're kind of assessing each other on, is like how can I help you, like how can I use my skills to like help you go further. Like that's such a common conversation, is how can I support you, what can I do for you. It's not so much, hey, what can you give me, but it's how can I give. Because I really believe that at the upper echelons of business, people want each other to succeed because we want to lift everyone up together. So that's one of the reasons I love being an entrepreneur, is the community of people who help support me and help me believe in myself when I don't.
Tim, man, it's just real.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the thing. I want people to believe in themselves, not what they feel or who they feel they have to be.
Hmm.
Free from the shoulds, right? Well, I should be, or someone else thinks that I should be. Um, it's like don't shit on other people and don't shit on yourself.
Hmm.
Um, you're
Yeah.
free.
Have to. Right?
Yeah.
In
Yep.
fact, I'll give everyone right. You want a quick little shortcut? I love shortcuts too. This is a fun one. All of you can do. I learned it from Dave Asprey, but the guy from Bulletproof Coffee. Go into your phones and find the little spelling correct and the autocorrect. And I want you to put in, right? Consider doing this, right? Put in the word have. And whenever you type the word have, my phone comes back and it says weasel word. Because you don't have to do anything, Tim. You want to do things. And so like that word is slowly getting eliminated out of my vocabulary, along with the word try. Like I don't try to do things. I either do them or I don't. And so, right, you can take these words, these patterns of language that it can really steal your joy. Just hack them out of your phone, like move them away, reprogram your brain so that when you're automatically typing them in an email or a text message, it comes back. It's like, dude, that's a weasel word. Don't use that word. We'll give you a better word to use. And it does. It helps you start changing the way you see the world.
Well, I love that because it's like, Tim, like, why not? Like, I want you to be bold.
Yeah.
I want you to have faith that you're on a mission, and your mission is to do again what you're called to do, with intention, with purpose. It doesn't mean you can't be playful. It doesn't mean you can't have fun.
Well, that's part of my purpose, man. Like that's part of it, is to make this fun and exciting and do the journey. And and let's tie back to the authentic place, right? It's, to me, this is so important. It's like being who you are authentically. And so, I grew up as an emo kid, right? I love screaming boy bands, like that's my thing, right? The raw emotion, the punk rock, and to me, there's actually a deep connection with entrepreneurship, because to be an entrepreneur, you need grit. Punk rock has grit. You got to be authentic. Guess what? Punk rock is pretty authentic. At least it was. These days, not so much. But right, the old school punk, really authentic, full of grit, right? Raw energy, raw emotion. And so to me, it's like that's kind of my core, that's my ethos. And I'm bringing those things into my presentations and the way I talk and, doing a new intro to my show. I had a great friend of mine, Nate Parrish. He's a guitar player for Cutlass. Like he wrote the introduction for my show, and it's like got this whole punk rock vibe to it because once again, I want to bring those parts of me that make me authentic, that make me light up, because I want to have fun with this and I want to encourage others to have fun in their businesses too and incorporate like what makes you tick, like what are the things you enjoy. Talk about those things and then find ways to draw analogies to what you're teaching and how you're giving so that you can help people understand what you understand. And the way we do that is through common connections and things like music or sports or movies, right? We find those common activities, find a way to draw analogies to what you do and have fun with it. So like that's part of my mission in being authentic is you got to have fun with the things that make you who you are and the things you enjoy.
What I love what you said about it's what lights you up.
Yeah.
And if I think of connection between people as resonance and a lack of connection would be dissonance, imagine you perform, you model, you do what you think you have to do, and that's what people end up resonating with. Well, it's like, oh crap, now I have to keep playing that part. And
Oh,
that's where I was thinking early on, thank God I got the insight and revelation and courage to just be myself in the dating paradigm. Because I was just like, wait a second. If I show up in the way that I think I ought to be as a guy looking for a girl, and my future wife ends up falling in love with that, I might have to perform the rest of my life. But if I can just have the courage to be like, look, like this is me. Like I'm just gonna be who I am. And if they resonate with that, and if they can actually say yes to that, and that they can actually choose to love me as I am, then I don't have to perform a day in my life.
yeah.
But yet I didn't take that approach in business right off the bat. Because like, no, business, got best practices and there's a way and sure there's truth in all of that, but you still have to be the one that takes the path.
Yeah.
And you're a person. You're not a process. You're not a robot. Not yet, at least.
That's coming next year. Chat GPT person. It'll right.
Well,
But
because
yeah, right.
I think we can,
Yeah.
create with our voices AI versions of ourselves already. It's scary.
But right, yeah, that just being yourself, early on as a wealth advisor, this is, 20 some odd years ago when I was just getting started, right? Everyone was my client. I didn't know who I served. I really didn't know who I helped. And that put a lot of pressure on me because I felt like I had to look a certain way and dress a certain way and behave a certain way. And I was always,
This
I
is
had,
the role. This is
yeah,
what
like,
successful wealth advisors do, Tim.
and man, it was so much stress, Sean. Like I hated it. I hated that I felt like I couldn't go out, on a hot summer day and like hang out in shorts and a flip flop because I might meet a potential client. And what do I look like? Like it was just so much stress. And what was great is as I met my wife, as I really figured out I could have a big impact on dental entrepreneurs, all that stuff started to disappear, and I realized I could just be me. And I started doing things, and you're right, I still want to dress up, I still want to be formal in the right way, but I ditched the tie and I adopted a bow tie. Like that's my thing. Like I'll do a bow tie, but I won't ever do a regular tie again. Right. And so you find ways to adapt to the social norms that are around us, but do it in a way that's fun for you. Because, like you said, if you do that, you never have to perform a day in your life. Like you just get to be who you are. And I'm going to argue there still is an active performance, right? It's interesting when we come to business, right? The language we use for business, and I don't know if you've ever noticed this, it's so similar to the language that we use for theater and for plays. We talk about what role do you play at the company? What's your presentation going to be on? What's your story, right? These are all theater terms that we use. And so in a very real sense, we're always on the stage, but it's the stage of life. And what's the character that you are? Who are you becoming and who are you? And that's the role you should play.
Well, so here, just a little twist on that.
Yeah.
Um, did I tell you about that woman, Megan? I think Macedo is her name. I listened to her at a conference, and she introduced the idea of the business paradigm and the art paradigm,
Hmm.
and how the business paradigm was all about more of like the market and being beholden to the stakeholders and needing to figure out how you can, what do you need to do in order for that external reality to have alignment, and again, performance is part of that. But the art paradigm is the answers aren't outside of me,
Mm,
the answers are within me, because Picasso can only be the artist that Picasso is. You can't be something other than you are. Um, so one of those things I've been trying to do is figure out how, because I even because then there's the cliche, well, the starving artist. So even an artist though needs to figure out how, in some ways, to play the game of business. But I want to do it at the identity level of being an artist, where I have permission to give the
mm.
world my art. How does that sound? Thinking of yourself as an artist, and you probably already do because you actually are an artist.
Yeah, and that's been a more recent identity shift over the last couple of years for me is really, realizing, no, I am a creative, right? I'm a creator. And so just that whole idea of, right, how do you give to the world? How do you serve them, right? How do you bring your art? How do you bring your craft to people? And that's been a huge fundamental shift. And just, right, how do I deliver to people? And coming back to, right, how do you do that in a heart-centered way? Because at the end of the day, right, I don't have any special financial strategies or products or tactics, right? Right, no one has really unique things. Even Apple, right, with their iPhones, super unique, but there's a right, it's essentially glass and metal, right? So how do you differentiate yourself? Well, you do that through heart, you do that through soul, and you do that by focusing on who's the human in front of you. What do they need? How do you serve them? So that to me is the creative act. It is really working with someone, figuring out what's important to them, and then how can I help them get that using all the tools and strategies of the world around us.
You literally took exactly where I was going to go with this. I've kind of been putting something kind of on the back burner over the last few minutes where I was like, man, there's something that I know when I started out, Tim, I became pretty immature in the fact that I cared so much about where I would end up.
Mm,
Everything was about this accomplished, successful, rich entrepreneur. It was about making all the money. Again, it was about the status, not necessarily for other people, but just the idea that I'd made it, I could take care of my family, I was successful, and I'd reached this location. All about the where. And it's like the more mature I've become, the more I realize like it starts with who. It all starts with what you were saying. Who can I actually serve? Who am I called to? Who is an issue or a problem that I can create value for?
mm-hmm.
And then I just need to literally just see them as a person and be committed to helping them in the way that I'm able to. And then everything else takes care of itself. It's you don't get into business for the where. Well, because at some point I just want to be rich and blah, blah. No, that's a destination. Like that's misaligned.
Mm-hmm.
You get into business because you realize you have value and you can help a person or a people group or a practice.
I think it's actually okay to combine both of them, believe it or not. Because right, I'm still all about the where, very, very much. Like right, I'm working towards an eight-figure exit. Like 49 years, 47 years old. I got plenty of time ahead, but it's like that's my ultimate goal is an eight-figure exit. But I want to get there on a ride that I enjoy. Right? I want to get there. If I get to an eight-figure exit and I've destroyed my marriage and I've destroyed relationships and I've done it unethically and I've done it without integrity through lying and cheating and stealing and scamming, I've done it wrong, man. Like that I got to the place I wanted, but I got there the wrong way at too high of a cost. But if I get there through integrity, through love, through service, and I reach that exit with relationships intact and better than when they started, then man, I did the journey the right way. So I think it's absolutely okay to have an exit and something that we're aiming for. But the question is, how are you getting there? Because the path matters just as much as the destination, right? They absolutely both matter.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. And I just meant more like in terms of preeminence. I started literally because of the where,
Hmm.
and I realized
Yeah.
I get there
Hmm.
by actually seeing and caring about real people.
Exactly.
And with kind of AI on the rise, it's like, what is it that makes us distinctly human? And it probably has a lot more to do with EQ and connection and heart.
Hmm.
So it's amazing that you even said, it's like, well, yeah, but you do it with heart, you do it with soul. Um, and that's why even like this episode, I just hope it can help encourage people's hearts, restore hearts, restore belief
Hmm.
that like you are the answer, the person that's listening. Like the answer isn't outside of you. It's not something you have to learn. It's not something you have to become. It's who you are. And obviously you want to be the best version of yourself. I don't know about you, Tim, but I know there's plenty of wretchedness inside of me. And it's not just, oh, let me just be a wretch because that's my authentic self. No, I have whims, I have pressures, I have temptations, I have things
Hmm.
that are common with those that are in the human experience.
Yeah.
And that's not what uplifts other people when
Mm-mm.
I step into that.
Yeah.
If anything, that just hurts other people. Um, so Tim, when it comes to, I don't know, um, what's something practical, I guess, over the last 5, 10 years in your entrepreneurial journey, that's helped you either stay grounded or stay focused on what matters to you? Do you have like a ritual, or do you have like a certain weekly habit, or some sort of practice that helps you stay kind of more aligned to what it is that you care about?
I would tell you the thing that has made the biggest difference, Sean, among everything else, it's really been community. Community is what has made the difference. It's the mastermind groups that I'm in, it's the meetings that I go to, it's the friendships that I make, because those things, right? It's the relationships. That's what helps provide the accountability to do the journaling. It's what provides the accountability to get clear on what's important in life for me. It's what provides the conversations like you and I are having right now to help me refocus and rethink and retrain my mind, because those don't happen in isolation. For me, they happen in community and with others. And it's very much what's known as a heroine's journey. I don't know. Are you familiar with the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell? And maybe for our listeners who don't know that, a guy named Joseph Campbell wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And warning, I'm going to ruin every single movie that you've ever seen. So be
Well,
warned.
so wait, did Storybrand take Donald Miller? Did he take it from?
This is exactly where
Okay,
Donald Miller gets this from. Is from
cool.
Joseph Campbell and A Hero with a Thousand Faces, and it's usually a hero, right? Leaves their ordinary world, they go on a journey, they fight some bad person, and they come back to the world changed. And it's very much a journey of one person doing one act, and then them bringing back the knowledge and being a hero to everyone else. But there's another journey that takes place, and that's called the heroine's journey. And the heroine's journey is not a journey of a hero adventuring by themselves. The heroine's journey is about community and transforming together. And so I'm very much on a heroine's journey because I love working with others. I don't want to get to the end and say I did this thing alone. Like I want to do it with others. And so, coming back to what's made the biggest difference for me, it's community.
I feel like that is one of the traps of entrepreneurs, is the disconnectedness. It is the isolation. And I don't know, maybe inherent in there is that lie of, in order to earn the stripes and the badges, you got to do it by yourself. And it's just like, I remember the first 4 or 5 years I was learning with my dad and kind of being more in the boardroom, and realizing I wasn't connected to the actual marketplace I was serving. So here we are, we're selling toothbrushes, but I'm not really being connected to the dentists or other possible vendors that I can partner with. We're just doing kind of transactions. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not a transaction kind of guy. I'm like, I want to know the people I'm helping. I want to know what their hopes, their dreams, their fears are, and I want real connection. And that's why when I started going to shows and started making amazing friends and hanging out with real dentists and caring about them, that didn't just change my resolve or my enjoyment. It actually gave me also ideas on how to shape and come up with innovative programs because I was listening to the actual market that I was serving. So it was so crazy to me. Like, oh wait, like how do you provide value to a market you just show up and talk to them and actually care about them and find out what their struggles are.
Yeah.
And then see if there's some tool you've been given or uh, something you have to offer. And if you can align it in a certain way to be able to help them in a bigger way, it's that simple. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tim, because I kind of forgot part of my journey was also that starting in isolation.
Yeah. Well, because that's how I think a lot of us begin, right? We start with this idea, and like you said, we're climbing the mountain alone, and and we often find people don't understand us, and that's true, right? I find this, right, whether I'm at church or with some of my other friends who I love dearly, like some of them I just can't talk to this stuff about. Like I try, but they don't know what it's like to watch cash flow go up and down. They don't know what it's like to, have payroll more than what they make in a year. Like we just live in different places, and this isn't good or bad. It's different experiences. Some of my greatest friends, like they show up, they work a job, they come home, and it's like they get to leave everything when they clock out at 5 o'clock. Like we carry these things with us because we're thinking, we're plotting, we're scheming, and sometimes I think I'm a little bit weird because if I'm hanging out at a party, like I'm ready to start talking like marketing funnels and like value propositions and like practice messaging, and everyone else wants to talk about like the latest thing on Netflix. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, tell me about it. But it's like that's not my heart, and I'm not against Netflix. Like I watch my silly shows too, but right, it's a different focus. It's like a different ethos. It's a different thing we're aiming for. And so you got to find that community of people who get you and understand you, so that when you're having these conversations, they're like, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, you didn't have enough cash flow to make payroll. Yeah, I know what that's like. That sucks. I'm sorry it happened to you."
As you're saying this, Tim, it's like what I'm thinking about is how when I started, so I started working with my dad originally. So
Mm,
I'm an employee and I'm doing sales and I'm realizing I don't like sales. And I realized I just need to self-educate and teach myself about marketing and supply chain and branding and design. And I did. Um, but from the start to even when I started my own business, my first one, I realized like when the only quest or the only mission you're on is the one that is your vocation,
mm,
that's where there's potential danger. And that's where, maybe this can help some listener out there. Um, when I got married, it became this really easy trap of like almost like it was like the culmination of our dating, like almost like the finish, like the seal, like a ring's on my finger, a ring's on hers. She's got my last name. Awesome. Now we can almost like turn the page and start on something else.
mm,
And it's true that we could start on something else together, but I don't know if I actually intentionally thought of it that way. And that's why one of my encouragements to everybody would be like, what quest, what adventure are you still on with your spouse?
mm.
What adventure are you on with your children and getting to know them if you have children? Um, because when your vocation becomes the singular quest that you're on, I feel, and then again, it's not about balance. I've heard people say it's not about balance, it's about harmony. I just think there's more richness and more depth to life. And I found that I was much more fulfilled when I was still leading and excited about where my family was going. Because for the longest time, I put everything on hold. Like when we reach a certain measure and I can say I'm successful, then all of a sudden I can spoil my family. And I'm just like, what if that never happens? Like, is that the reason why I'm not going to spoil my family?
Yeah.
Is the only way I can spoil them with money? It's not with my presence. It's not with my perspective. It's not just with me getting to be super generous with my time
Mm.
and my love and my affection and calling them forth and mentoring them and nurturing them and challenging them to really grow. Like, so that was something for me, Tim. I had this kind of if
Mm.
then scenario where I wasn't going to fully be able to be, I don't know, what enter into whatever until something out there happened. And an example of that is a wrestling mat. I have two sons, and I've always wanted to wrestle them. Now they're still young. My oldest is 12, son, so he's not that big. But just the other day, I don't have the perfect space for it yet. I don't have the dream house with the huge basement where I can have a dedicated space. We bought a wrestling mat because I'm like, I'm not waiting for the external dream to live the reality that I want, where
Yeah.
it's like I show up and I just give my kids the best of me. And you know, business takes a lot.
Hmm.
And that's why I think sometimes when it's just always portrayed as this glamorous thing, it's like there's a chance entrepreneurship isn't for everybody.
Hmm. Well, right, and what a beautiful story with your sons and wrestling with them, right? I think about that, right? And I can almost imagine them, in the future telling a story like, we didn't have a house big enough for the whole, basement and wrestling match, but Dad didn't care. Like didn't matter to Dad. He went out and he bought a wrestling mat and put it down in our living room, and we wrestled for weeks on end, and it didn't matter. Like we pretended we were in the WWF, right? Like the power of imagination and fitting in and not waiting. Like that's so powerful, right? Dad didn't put this off. Dad did it, and he did it now for us. So I love that, Sean. Right, bringing our dreams into the present and not waiting because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, it's kind of like what excuses
Mm-hmm.
do we allow to be the reasons why we don't show up the way we want to?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know about you, but it's like even with like trips, it's like, oh well, I'm gonna spoil my wife to the crazy, vacation once we've it's all these things that are in the future, and it's like, well, but how am I spoiling her now? Like,
Right.
and maybe I'm an idealist. I don't know if you find yourself ever struggling with that, because you can envision, because you can picture what a better future looks like. Sometimes we leave things staying in the future because things aren't we haven't reached that ideal yet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that am I alone on that one? Like, or do you find
No.
yourself struggling with idealism ever?
100%. And that used to keep me paralyzed, Sean, is having to have things a certain way before I could move forward, before I could launch it, before I could bring it out. And there's something to be said about, like, yes, get your product right, yes, get your message, like, yes, like do it well. But you got to reach a point where you're like, okay, I've made it far enough that, like, this is good. And so, I've adopted what I call the 85% rule. It's like, am I 85% of the way there? Like, is this, like, legitimately, like, good enough? And I'm like, all right, I'm done tinkering. Like, let's run with it. And right, and part of it is also like building your rocket ship on the way to the moon, which is what you're talking about when you're wrestling with your kids. It's like you're not waiting until everything's perfect, because the truth is there'll never be a perfect time ever. And that's what I've learned time and time again. Is the more I wait for perfection, the more I wait for the stars to align, the more I wait for the right. It's not there. Now you certainly want to use wisdom, and there's better times than others to do things. But this idea of, like, you need everything to just no. Sometimes you just got to say there's no good time for this. I'm going to do it now.
I'm developing that bias toward action, which so my default isn't action. I'm very much a thinker. I'm very much someone that just likes to be.
Hmm.
I think I could have been a really great ancient philosopher. And maybe the idea of them sitting around all day and thinking isn't completely true. Um, but if it was, that to me, that's kind of why I love road trips or I love flying,
Mm,
because you're forced to not, you don't feel guilty about the fact that you can think. That's why I do float spas, because
mhm.
the isolation where you just get to just be. I absolutely love that. But I've learned at the same time, Tim, that there is a high value on production. And it's almost incumbent on me to honor the production that I need to do, or that I can do, or that only I can do, in order to just like love people well, in order to elevate people, in order to share my gift.
Mhm.
So in that ways, I don't think of it as a bad thing. I don't think of it as something that's like, oh no, no, I have to work hard or something like that. It's like I want to, because I want to help individuals see then that they're more than their 9 to 5.
Mhm.
That they're more than that they actually have the freedom to dream the dreams that are on their heart, and and they have the freedom to even forgive themselves for the times that they stopped dreaming.
Yeah. So on that productivity piece, let's dive there for a moment. So when you go through your day and you mentioned like, hey, you look at how productive you are, right? Do you really feel like you've been productive if you kind of make the list of things you've gotten done? Do you ever kind of look and you're like, oh wow, I actually did get a lot done today, or is it like, man, I didn't get anything done? And I know it's a spectrum, but where do you kind of find yourself a lot of the times?
Well, as the host laughs.
Well, I'll go first to give you time to think about it. But you know, because I've struggled with this, and there's some days where I go through and I'm like, man, I didn't do much of anything today. Like I sat on the couch with like my wife and like we went for a couple walks and like I didn't do anything. And then there's other days where I get a whole bunch of stuff done, but I still reach the end of the day. I'm like, man, I didn't do anything. Like what did I like? Look at all the things I didn't get done. And so what I've found is that, you know, those days where I'm not highly productive, that's actually getting recharged and ready so that when I show up, I actually get more done in a day that most people get done in a week. And that's the thing I have to constantly remember. And I know someone listening needs to hear that because as driven entrepreneurs, you get done more than what most people get done in a week. You guys do in a day. And as driven entrepreneurs, we don't reach the end of our day and be like, "Oh my gosh, I got all these amazing things done." We say, "Oh, I didn't get those two things I wanted to get done today. Man, I totally failed." Because we're focusing on the gap instead of everything that we've gained. And so I've had to learn how to be gentle with myself on the rest days and realize like, no, it's okay because I am busting my butt the other days and I'm getting so much done that like if I don't work on a Saturday, like, dude, that's okay. Like that's recharge. If I take Mondays off, like that's okay. If I come back from a conference and I schedule a down day after, you know, being on for 4 days and travel, it's like, no, that's okay. That's rest and recovery. And that's taking care of myself. And I need to do that. That's what my clients, that's what my friends, that's what the partners I work, that's what they're expecting me to do is take care of myself so I can keep serving them.
I don't think I realized how much the gap in the gain insight was going to be so eye-opening for me because I like everyone that was a friend of mine would listen and they'd be like, Sean, all you see is the ways in which you haven't, where you're not yet. It's the not yet. It's the not yet. It's the yeah, but I'm still not. But yeah, but I'm still not. And call it intellectual honesty, call it delusion, call it immaturity. I don't know. I was really good at seeing that. And then my friends would have to be like, yeah, but look how far you've come. And I'm like, but I haven't, like, so what? Like, I'd be so quick to dismiss it, shrug it off. And yet, you know, that's why like Dr. Allison House, my podcast partner, an authentic dentist, she's like, Sean, don't you remember 5 years ago we're in my office in this room that was where she does treatment planning. The audio was terrible because of the, you know, the AC unit that was up above. We had one Yeti mic between the both of us. We didn't know exactly how close to be because who'd be louder. Um, and it did. It sounded terrible. And we would do like voice clicks. We just didn't know what we were doing, but we did it anyway, and we started. And when I look back on that, it's like I honor that journey. And I want to be, Tim, someone that honors the journey in myself more, that treats myself and releases so much more grace, um, so much more tenderness. And I think it's even David that says, your tenderness has
Mm,
made me great when talking
mhm.
about the Lord.
Yeah.
It's his tender mercies. He's not some harsh, always, you know, beating us down. Oh, you're not good enough. It's this tender love that lifts up, that encourages, you know, and not to compare to other people in a way of like putting them down, but so many other individuals that end up being cogs in a wheel, they do what someone else is telling them to do. If you're an entrepreneur truly and you're pioneering and you're committed to actually trying to create, trying to actually bring something that didn't exist before into existence to serve the marketplace, it is a noble act. And the fact that you're even grappling with the lack of guarantee, the fact that you're grappling with the high risk, the fact that probably 95% of what you do doesn't work. And yet you have to have the resilience to keep on going. You have to have that inner drive, even when you don't have that perfect community that's always around you. Um, it's a lot of work. So just honoring that struggle. That's
Yeah.
why anyone else that's in the game with me, it's like I see you. And it's like I see you. You're my brother, Tim. And I see that you honor it and you go for it. And it's tough. And sometimes there's arrows sticking out of your back. And I feel for you, man, because it's tough, but I'm so thankful you're doing it. I'm so thankful you're committed. I'm so thankful you're dedicated. I'm so thankful for all the times that people didn't see, that you didn't give up when you could have. You didn't give in when you could have. You didn't back down when the pressure got tough. You are still doing it. So for that, my friend, I just want to honor you, man. Like, thank you for continuing to be so selfless so
Hmm.
that other people can benefit.
Thank you for saying that, Sean. I appreciate that, and I feel it, and certainly feel the love, and honor your journey too. Right from the moment we connected, I've just really enjoyed our conversations, our encouragement, because there's that connection, because we get what the struggle's like, and that's part of why I'm writing this whole album. Right, it's called "Faithfully Falling Forward," and right, it's just a little side project. I'm writing it for me because it
Are
really
you
is the journey.
vocals?
I'm using AI to write the entire album.
So
it's
how does AI sing?
it sings for you, man. It does the vocals, it does the music. You can control it. It's amazing. It's so good. Well, you heard the soundtrack at Weevolution, right?
Oh
The
yeah.
I
That
wrote that the whole thing for Vanessa. So like AI does it, and
can you tell me afterwards a little bit when
yeah,
we're not on air about some of those
yeah.
things because
I-
I have some scripts and some songs and I want to create some music that just are like inspired tracks for me.
yeah.
I'm not producing them. I'm not. It's not for anything like that. It's just for me. So that would be
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, I'm writing it for me, and like, I've already got two albums on Spotify, but it's for me. And if someone else listens, like, cool, come along. But you talk about the not giving up piece, and another one of the songs is called "Walking Away," and I'll just kind of read this to you. But the opening lines are right. I've been chasing a dream that's slipping away. I've made it this far, but I feel the strain. I'm tired of fights I'll never win. If I quit now, does the weight lift in? I could turn around, leave it all behind, but walking away might waste what's mine. It's tempting to let go, let it all fall. I'm tired of shouldering it all. What's left if I leave it undone? I'll never know what I could have won. I've carried this far, but what's enough? I tell Atlas to shrug, let go of the bluff. These dreams keep slipping out of reach. Why keep climbing when I'm on the ledge? One wrong move, and I'm on the edge. I could give it up, just let it go. But if I stop, will I ever know? And I think that's the struggle we are caught in so often as entrepreneurs is you reach a certain level of success and you're like, man, I could give this all up. Like I can walk away and like I'll eke out okay. I got enough. Like I don't have to get, but there's something that keeps pulling us because if we walk away, we'll never know how the story ends. And to me, that's what keeps pulling me in. It's like I started something and I'm gonna finish it. Right? It's that grit. It's that authenticity. It's that hard work. It's the unseen work. It's the struggle, and there's power in that. At least for me. And the struggle, as hard as it is, somehow keeps pulling me forward, and I can't let go of this thing. Even with all the trials and struggles that I go through sometimes, I haven't been able to let it go because if I let it go, I'll never know how the story ends.
Oh my gosh. Tim, I so I'm blown away by those lyrics. There's something about poetry, and I'm just lumping that into kind of poetry in the
Mhm.
sense that it's artistic expression
Yeah.
with words that somehow tells a truer story than a paragraph or an
Mhm.
essay on that same reality. Because something about how, when I'm hearing it that way, it just makes sense. Like it just hits me on more of an emotional level of like, I'm there right now with Zana, you know
Yeah. Oh yeah.
that. Oh my God. Yeah, that hits close. I don't even know what to say with that.
So, well, right, again, so that's song six, and coming up on seven, which I just finished, which is about you got to reach a point where it's all in or nothing, and it's eventually going to end on a very hopeful note. But right now we're still kind of in the struggle phase, and we haven't resolved the album,
When
because
do you think that'll be completed?
I'll probably have it done, in the next month or two. So it'll be published on Spotify very shortly. And like I said, I hope it encourages people, because right, to me it's like the music you and I listen to,
Wait. Is
soundtrack.
it screamo?
Oh yeah, it's totally emo. It's pop punk emo. It's awesome. It's my
That's
it's my
so
jam.
cool, Tim.
But it's like, right, the things we listen to, right, like really impact how we think, how we operate, what we do. And music like matters. And I don't believe enough entrepreneurs have a soundtrack to keep them encouraged. And that's why I think, emo pop punk is so appropriate, because it hits the emotional journey that you and I go through on this roller coaster called entrepreneurship.
Now, speaking of soundtracks, like in what ways have you had to be intentional about your own inner dialogue, about your own scripts, about your
Mm.
own soundtrack, that instead of betting against yourself or feeding yourself stuff that deflates you or discourages you, um, what have you had to do so that you're kind of almost like encouraging yourself?
This has been a 20-year battle, and it's gotten a whole lot better. And so I share that with everyone. So no matter where you are, no matter what your internal dialogue is, you can change it. Because I remember the days where that internal dialogue was so dark, Sean. It was, you're never enough, give up, this isn't going to work, why are you doing this? You're better off dead. Like real
Mm.
dark thoughts, Sean. And it did. It took intentionality, and it took others, right? It took others who believed in me. It took a grandma who loved me, who took a risk on me, that said, Tim, you're living in a little apartment all by yourself in Sherman Oaks. Like, come live with me and help me out. Like, come help me. And just her believing in me, and giving me a job. I know that sounds simple, but it's like, by giving me purpose and believing in me, that helped uplift me, right? That helped change the script, because I could see the difference that I made for someone. Or it took being with my wife, and couple in, year 2 years into marriage, it's like, what do we do? This whole thing's a waste. Like, man, why did I do this? And you had to change it, and I had to change it, and realize, no, this is good. But it took friends, it took counselors, it took peers saying, no, this is okay, you can fight through this, Tim. And now I wouldn't trade my marriage for Dana for anything, because it's better than it's ever been. But those dialogues have to change, because so often, right, we see the negative in things, right? It's the whole gap and gain again, right? We focus on the things we don't have, instead of focusing on what we do have. And in fact, I was just watching something last night, and it was talking about, we've got, body dysmorphia, or all these dysmorphias, and we don't view things correctly. And I really believe, and I forget who the author of this was, but he was talking about how we have life dysmorphia. We don't properly view life. Like 100 years ago, Sean, no one had warm showers. Like that didn't exist. And like
Crazy.
we have warm showers and cars and electricity and air conditioning and cell phones and like internet. Like we have all these things that we take for granted, and we just have them always there. And so that dialogue, right? I think we change that dialogue to really become more positive when we focus on gratitude, right? When we view gratitudes. And so that's a long answer to your question, but the way I've changed that internal dialogue is ultimately through gratitude, is how I've been able to do it.
Yeah, and for people again that are tuning in, it's like I just like what if you just dared to believe? And instead of being the reason or the vote against yourself, it's like you were actually aligned
Yeah.
and you just went for it. Um, I love giving people permission to pioneer because I have to give it to myself all the time. Like, it's because it was a hard fought lesson, Tim.
Hmm.
I have to stir myself up. I have to focus on, meditate on, lay hold in front of me of the truths that I fought for so that I get out of my own way, so that I don't go back in toward comfort, toward playing it small, toward all my natural tendencies. My natural tendencies, aside from like some of the connection ones with people, those are pretty natural. Most of my other tendencies are like to just kind of settle and play it safe. I'm very cautious. I had a brother that was 13 months older than me. I still do. He's not dead, but meaning like growing up. Um, and he split his head open, broke his arm, had concussions. Like he was the push it a little farther, swing a little higher than jump, go higher in the tree than fall. Like show me the boundaries. And me being a somewhat wise younger brother was just like, oh, just do it safer because safer means less pain. So in some ways, just being a smart kid, I just realized like, oh, don't be so bold because it could lead to you getting hurt. But that's actually not the message you want to have when it comes to, I'm not talking about danger, but when it comes to boldness of expression, boldness of trying, it's like, go for it. Well, what if it fails? So what? Then you learn something and
Yeah.
you meet someone along the way that's going to help you with the next thing.
Hmm.
I don't know much about Rachel Hollis. I saw her at one event when I was there with Brennan Bouchard. And she's like, everyone's like, oh my gosh, Rachel, girl, wash your face, or whatever the heck the book was. It's amazing that you could just be so gifted and talented to write a, national New York Times bestseller with your very first book. And she'd be like, guys, it was my fourth book. The first three books no one cared about.
Yep.
And then they'd be like, oh, but then for you to be able to follow up with that and your second book ever, I mean, your fifth book, for that to be a number one, New York Times bestseller, that's amazing. And she's like, no, actually my fifth book tanked and no one cared about it. It was my sixth book that people cared about. And it was just such a cool story where it was just, she's like, the encouragement, she's like, just write your first three bad books.
Yeah.
Like, get them out of the way.
Yep.
Get your first three bad business ideas out of the way.
Yeah.
Your first three seminars, whatever. And I'm not saying ruin your reputation. I'm not saying do things wrong. I'm just saying, like, we're so caught up with right and wrong, when it's so much more about speed of learning.
Hmm.
And you and I both know. Most people don't know this. You can tell because they'll want to meet with you and be like, can we sign an NDA because I have this really cool idea. Ideas are so cheap. It's all about how you execute on them. Those people that are world class are just world class at actually executing ideas. Ideas are cheap. You want to talk about ideas? I'll share ideas night and day. I get ideas more than I know what to do with them. It's about how you execute an idea. So my encouragement to you is just go. Take a step. Whatever the next best step is, do it. You're probably going to be wrong. You're probably going to fail. You're probably going to screw up. And knowing that, would you still do it? I hope the answer is yes, because you found enough meaning in why you're doing it. So why are you doing what you're doing, Tim?
Oh man, it really comes down to making an impact for people. And I've had the privilege of helping to underwrite some very groundbreaking research on entrepreneurs. We actually just completed the largest study of entrepreneurs ever done. We did it in conjunction with strategic coach and Dan Sullivan. And the findings of this study, Sean, are just amazing. Not only do we have net worth breakdown, we have income levels, we have business valuation, we know what entrepreneurs are struggling with, their biggest challenges, we know their outlooks for the future, but we also dove into the advisors that they're working with. And it's absolutely shocking, Sean. 1 out of 3 high net worth entrepreneurs, they're going to be changing advisors in the next 24 months. Right, they are looking for new advisors. And the reason they're doing that is there's 5 key concerns that they face. They want to manage their money well, they want to protect their assets, they want to mitigate their taxes, they want to transfer their money to the next generation, and they want to support the causes that they're passionate about. So 5 key concerns. And we find that they're very, very important to the entrepreneurs. We find that the advisors that we talk to, when we ask them, are you helping your clients actually achieve these 5 things? All the advisors put their hands up and go, oh yeah, we're totally helping our clients do these things. But then we ask the client, we say, is your advisor actually delivering these things to you? And we use a heat map to represent it. And a heat map, when it's red, there's lots of alignment. When it's blue, there's no alignment. What's amazing is only about 71% of entrepreneurs are getting any kind of investment advice from their advisors. Everything else is in the 20% range. They're not getting the things that they want. They're not getting the things that actually make a difference for them to help them support the people they love, the causes they matter, and really make an impact in the universe. And so for me, why I do what I do actually comes down to a couple that I helped a couple years ago retire. They were able to sell their dental practice. And when you sell your practice, it's a big taxable event. And I'm a believer that you should spend the money on things that matter to you, not the government tax bill. And so when they sold their practice, we were able to work with them and actually mitigate a substantial amount of taxes that they were paying by putting the money into essentially something that's similar to a private foundation called a donor advised fund. They put this money in, they got a massive tax deduction. But that's not what mattered most to me. What mattered most to me is then they took some of those funds and donated it to a local art museum that they had loved, that they had always wanted to be a part of. Now they're part of the board, they've got their name on the wall, and they're serving at this institution and really making an impact in the community. And their best days are ahead of them now, not behind them. So that's what gets me up every single day, is helping my clients achieve what's important to them so they can change the world for the better and really have an impact. That's my why. It's to improve things, make things better, and help support people getting what they want.
Okay, guys, so you heard it here. I literally had just finished a monologue, and at the very last part of that monologue, I threw in the question, had no clue it was coming, and I said, "Why do you do what you do, Tim?" And bam, beautifully, so succinctly, that was amazing.
Well, thank you. Well, and to tie it all back together, right? We're being real and honest. Like, this is a sandbox session. The reason I was able to do that, Sean, is I've rehearsed that for 15 years. Like I've been practiced, right? Because I had to discover. If you would have asked me that 15 years ago, I would have been like, it's because I'd like to help people reach their goals. But right, it's been rehearsed, it's been said, it's been practiced, it's been meditated on, it's been thought about. That's why I was able to do that, is because I was able to crystallize it through practice. And so I think that's what I want everyone to take away from this is you can get there, but it's a journey, right? You got to go through the exercises. And if you do that, you can discover your why. You can be a better entrepreneur. You can make that difference. You can enjoy the journey, but it is a process of learning to get there.
And I love what you're saying about doing the work and understanding your story. Because now, again, with AI on the rise, it our story is what is part of what makes us distinctly human, and it's what's part of what makes us distinctly unoriginal. No one else has had your story. No one else had the unique experiences that have blended together, and the people that have shed light on your path, and the parents that have loved you, and just all those circumstances, including the tragedies and the traumas and the challenges that you've had to overcome. And that's what makes you distinctly you, Tim. And so I love that you own it, you leverage it, you're thoughtful about things, you are so generous in the way you care about people. I have so much admiration for you. If someone is somehow learning about you for the first time, and they don't know where to find you, where would you like them to go?
They can check me out at timmcneely.com or find me on Facebook. Send me a message on Instagram. I'm easy to find. Just type in Tim McNeely, McNeely. I'd be happy to chat with you and help serve you in any way that I can.
Tim, this
Sean.
is the Sandbox, and I knew after I interviewed you. So my interviews, the Sean Zaya Show, is kind of like my screening for the people that I would like to have in the Sandbox. Because the Sandbox, it's like there's no rules, and it's play, and it's exploring thoughts with people that I really respect and admire and look up to. And that's why after I interviewed you, I was like, man, I need to get Tim in the Sandbox. And I appreciate you, man. I'm on your side. I'm in your corner any way I can ever help. So one more thing. Does someone just look up your name on Spotify if they want to check out your
Oh yeah.
music?
Yeah, all you do is go on Spotify, type in Tim McNeely. The first album's up. It's called Anthems of the Unseen, and Faithfully Falling Forward will be coming out soon. It's music for entrepreneurs. That's why I'm writing this stuff.
So is it on Apple Music too, or just Spotify for now?
No, so Apple won't take AI music, but Spotify will. And once I get a couple of these done and I have a little bit more bandwidth, they're going to get converted into real songs done by real humans with real instruments.
I
So
had
it's coming. It's rapid prototyping of music, man.
Guys, it has just been a pleasure. Here we were talking about the entrepreneurial grind, and hopefully just the conversation, it being real, it being honest, talking about struggles, um, different things that have helped us along the journey will hopefully help you along the journey. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what both Tim and I want, is just to be able to take the last 10, 15 years of what we've learned and share it in a way that you don't feel embarrassed or ashamed, or if you're isolated, get plugged into a community. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to Tim, reach out to me. Um, yeah, we just want to see you owning who you are, being the best version of yourself, and hopefully finding fulfillment in the process. Tim, thank you so much for joining me in the Sandbox. I appreciate you, man.
Oh, this is a great sandbox, man. I've had fun playing with you. We've built some good castles. We've knocked a couple things down. We've rebuilt them, and really, we've dug deep in the sandbox, which is good.
Wow, no one else has given me those metaphors. That's good. I just always tell people, as long as they don't throw sand, we're good.
No throwing sand, man.
All right, man. Well, best to you.
Thank you, Sean.